Hi everyone, welcome back to the next mini ship history. This video is an adapted version of my talk at the Australian National Maritime Museum celebrating the 150th anniversary of Holland America Line cruises, as well as the publication of the epic 5-volume book series that covers the history of this company in unrivaled detail. In my hands is the first volume. Volumes 1 and 2 have now been published, with 3, 4 and 5 well on their way. There is a link down below for those of you who are interested in getting a copy. So if you've been watching lately, you would have seen some of my previous mini ship histories about some notable vessels of Holland America Line. In our mini ship history talk today, it is going to be about the 1938 Nieuw Amsterdam. Indeed, any discussion about Holland America Line would not be complete without the darling of the Dutch. This ship endeared itself to the Dutch population and indeed to anyone who went on board as a passenger or served as a crew member. And the story of this ship goes back to the early 30s and even beyond. So, as you probably would have seen in some of my other two previous videos, Holland America Line's attempts at getting a new national flagship failed twice, with 1914's Statendam failing due to war and its eventual loss, and then the 1929 Statendam, which replaced the previous ship, never had a chance to really shine in the limelight because it was already dated by the time it had entered service, and global economic conditions had robbed it of the opportunity to be as profitable as what it could have been. However, in the mid-1930s, Holland America Line executives cast around and noticed that various seafaring nations were producing and putting into service magnificent national flagships. This had begun by the Germans in 1929 with the Bremen and the Europa. The British were doing it with the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth. France had the sublime Normandy. Italy had the Rex and the Conte de Savoia. And even some of the smaller nations, such as Norway, had their new flagship, the Oslofjord. The Swedish were working on the visionary Stockholm. And even the Polish, who couldn't afford ocean liners, were getting 2 of them built. And if you're wondering how on earth that worked out, well, the 2 Polish flagships of the 1930s, the Pilsudski and the Batory, were paid for in coal shipments. It's a fascinating story, and one for another time. But with all these countries producing new ships that were ultra-modern and represented the best of their nations, they decided that, well, we need one as well. So the executives lobbied the Dutch government and were able to extract blood from a stone. They finally managed to get a loan. And at the rough cost of $12 million, the Nieuw Amsterdam was built. Entering service in 1938, the Nieuw Amsterdam was an absolute hit. Unfortunately, in the following year, the Second World War began, and with the invasion of the Netherlands, this was an ocean liner that didn't have a country. It wasn't trapped in Rotterdam with the invasion, and being overseas at the time, it was able to be used as an Allied troop ship. Throughout the course of the Second World War, the Nieuw Amsterdam did valiant service. Over 44 voyages in that time, this ship trooped all across the oceans, even coming down to Sydney, Australia. It travelled over the equivalent of 530,000 nautical miles and has been calculated to have carried over 378,000 people. One historian has stated that this figure is only surpassed by the 2 queens, which is understandable considering Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth at one point were averaging 15,000 to 16,000 troops on a crossing. In 1946, well and truly tired, the Nieuw Amsterdam went back to its homeland and was given a long overdue and much needed reconstruction. the ship was so thoroughly rebuilt that it cost even more than the original cost to build the ship to begin with. One of the things that had to be completely redone was the beautiful railings. Over those years as a troop ship, many troops would come and chisel their names and potentially rude messages into the wooden rails. And you really just can't have a first-class North Atlantic passenger steamer with "Kilroy was here" written on its deck rails. Once the ship had been reconditioned, it re-entered service and again regained a cherished place in the hearts of the Dutch people. And it's not much of a stretch to say that Holland America Line's brand identity, being a company that delivers a quality of service on an elegant shipboard experience, really stems from this ship. Such was its impact not only for the Dutch merchant marine, but for anyone who was able to sail on board. Unfortunately though, by 1974, the Nieuw Amsterdam was well and truly past its prime, and the world oil crisis meant that many of these older ships were just simply unprofitable to run. There were attempts at preserving the Nieuw Amsterdam, but none of these came to fruition, and so in 1974 the Nieuw Amsterdam was sadly sent to Taiwan and scrapped. However, the memory of this ship absolutely lives on, and there are 2 books out about this ship, at least in English. So we have this one by William H. Miller, The Darling of the Dutch, and we also have this one by Andrew Britton, The Nieuw Amsterdam. Both books follow a very similar format, with a summarized history of the ship followed by extensive photographs of scenes on board and the ship throughout its life. Miller's book, in his typical style, also adds additional Dutch ships for more context, whereas Andrew Britton's book remains solely focused on this particular ship. The first half of it is composed of text, and then the second half is completely full of photos. Both of them deserve a much more in-depth review, particularly in light of Nieuw Amsterdam's historic meaning for the Dutch people. So stay tuned for that a little later on. And of course, if you are enjoying these mini ship histories, please let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear about a history of an ocean liner, particularly those that aren't as famous, please let me know in the comments below.